I wanted to share some of my research with you. I'm an ad fraud investigator, and I'm going to build upon what Christina said. I'm going to build upon a little bit different angle to the scams that we had been talking about earlier this morning, most of which are affecting consumers. So when they go online and buy a fraudulent product, the consumers are getting scammed. What I'm going to talk about has to do with the platforms. So some of this stuff you're already probably very familiar with. So we've seen over the years, many billions of fake accounts being created on Facebook for the use of kind of followers and to really build up influencers, right? So as you can see on the right-hand side, Facebook actually is taking down billions and billions of accounts every year. So over 1 billion per quarter. So these are things that you're familiar with. And then furthermore, when we talk about the platforms, we often think about these kinds of scams. So on the left-hand side, we see hundreds and hundreds of products, whether it's the basically fraudulent mountain bikes. So instead of a $3,000 mountain bike, they're selling these from $50 to $100. Or some of these Japanese knives, everything, including the picture, the descriptions, everything is perfect. So these kinds of scams are affecting consumers on the platforms like Amazon. And like Christina said earlier, also on Facebook and Instagram, they're running rampant. And it also hurts small business owners. Some of these are the small artists who are trying to sell their products on Instagram or Facebook, but the scammers are actually copying the pictures of their products and then selling essentially counterfeits, right? So when the consumer receives a product, it's actually a very cheap looking knockoff. But even these are not as scalable as what I'm about to talk about, right? So we've seen the move from the offline world. So even here on Fifth Avenue, just on a Saturday morning, you can go outside and see these handbags laid out on a tarp on Fifth Avenue. So these scammers are openly selling counterfeit products. You know, it's not just in Chinatown anymore, it's on Fifth Avenue. But when you take this online, the fraud is much more scalable. So what you see here are the fraudsters not only taking out advertising on yahoo.com. So that's a video ad on the homepage of yahoo.com that leads to a scam website where they're selling those products. And as we heard from some of the speakers before, sometimes those sites don't even intend to ship product. Their whole intent is to get the consumer to type in their credit card number and their home address, thinking that they're buying these products at 90% off. So it's a way to harvest consumers' credit card information. And again, like some of the other speakers before, if you just take a look at the Who Is record, you can tell these sites are registered less than 30 days ago. Okay, so these are the kinds of scams that we're already seeing moving online and becoming much more scalable. But in addition to the products being fake and counterfeit, we now also see that the ads can be fake and counterfeit as well. So my area of study is digital ad fraud. So instead of the products being counterfeit, these are just made up ad impressions. So advertisers normally expect that their ads are being shown to humans when they visit websites. But now, because of programmatic advertising, which means we're automating the buying and selling of the ads, it has enabled fraudsters to set up fake websites, much like the scam websites, and direct a lot of traffic to them. And these are bot traffic, right? It's not humans visiting those sites. But because the pages are loading, they're able to load many billions of ad impressions. So the two primary forms of fraud I'm going to focus on here are impression fraud, where they get paid for every 1,000 times the ad impressions are served. And then there's also click fraud, where some of the bots can actually click on the ads as well. So what we've seen over the years is that instead of using these botnets for just DDoS attacks, right? So distributed denial of service attacks are where they overwhelm a site with so much traffic that the site fails. They can even do this to the largest of sites, but that wasn't very lucrative. What they're doing now with their botnets is pointing those botnets to sites that have ad tech code on them. So these are the sites that run ads. So if you have that enormous fire hose of traffic and you point it to a website that runs ads, that website can now make huge numbers of dollars fraudulently, because those ads are not being shown to humans, they're being shown to bots. And on the right-hand side, just to give you a sense of the scale of these botnets, you can imagine how large these quantities are. And if you look at the timeline of all these famous botnets, you'll see as we read further to the right, there are more and more colored green, the color of money. And that's because the botnets are now being used primarily for ad fraud, because it is by far the most lucrative use of the botnets to make money through ads. So now we have a compounded problem where you have enormous numbers of fake websites, right? So in addition to the ones that the previous speakers talked about, where they are hosting scams or fake e-commerce sites, just look at all of these sites on the left-hand side, right? No human's ever going to type those in to visit them. They're used solely for the purpose of ad fraud, right? They just need a whole bunch of these sites. They're just putting some ad tech code on them and they can run billions of ads. And the same phenomenon is happening with mobile apps as well. So how many of you have actually played Goat Simulator apps? Well, maybe some humans do, but not a whole bunch of humans. But bottom line is what they're doing here is they're cloning thousands upon thousands of these apps, again, for the sole purpose of running as many ad impressions as possible. And I think one of the previous speakers has shown a rack of mobile devices, kind of like you see on the left-hand side, right? So you have all these mobile devices plugged in and there's people that actually click on stuff. But how many can you actually fit in a room, right? You really can't fit that many before you run out of power or you need fans to cool them down. So what the fraudsters are doing is they're now going entirely virtual. So between the fake mobile devices, these are mobile emulators that are pretending to be mobile devices, combined with the fake mobile apps, you now can multiply the fraud enormously, right? To the point where you can generate 1 billion ads per minute or 30 billion ads per minute. And the largest of advertisers like the P&Gs, the Unilevers, when they're buying tens of billions of ad impressions online, this is the kind of stuff that they're buying, because there's simply not enough humans to generate enough ad impressions for them to buy. So majority of the ad impressions that we're seeing in digital advertising are made up by bot activity. Now, in addition to that, some humans are tricked by scams to download, for example, free VPNs, right? So anything that's free, you should be suspicious of, because why are they doing that, right? They're not doing that for charity, they're doing that for profit. So in this case, when humans, unsuspecting humans, download VPNs onto their devices, not only can these VPNs monitor all their traffic, essentially what they're doing is they're harvesting the traffic, the website visitation patterns, and they're selling that to advertisers for targeting ads to those users. And some less scrupulous VPNs, they're actually also malware, because once you've installed the code onto your device, they can do all manner of things like harvest your passwords, observe, turn your webcam on and things like that. So all of this now is used for ad tech targeting, for creating fake audiences to sell to advertisers. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the amount of bot activity. 6 in 10 site visits are from bots, right? So I think there's another estimate that about 3/4 of the traffic on the internet are from bots and not humans. And all of that now leads to something on the right-hand side, which is these are data providers that now have hundreds of millions of profiles that are not from humans, that are actually made from bots. And the bots are basically pretending to be those audiences simply by visiting different websites. So,
Augustine,
yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting. 1 more minute.
Perfect, almost done. And then finally, don't assume that if you're paying for leads that you're not subject to fraud. So in this case, a T-Mobile contest, there was a very low-level fraudster who was basically using his bots to fill out a form so he can enter the contest over and over again. So just be aware that even the leads that you get might be done fraudulently, where the bots are filling in complete information. And then finally, don't assume that your sales are real, because just know that the bad guys can actually insert false data into your Google Analytics to claim credit for sales that have already occurred, right? So those sales would have already happened without digital marketing, but now the fraudsters are claiming credit for it by altering the data. So ultimately, what we've seen over the last 10 years is that there's an enormous increase in bot activity. And all of those ad impressions are not shown to humans. In fact, 2/3 of the ad impressions I'm estimating to be shown to bots, because there's just way, way more of them. So ultimately for the advertisers, they're the ones getting ripped off. So previously we talked about consumers getting ripped off by scams. Now digital scams are actually ripping off big advertisers who are collectively spending $400 billion per year in digital advertising. And when they turn it off, they see no impact. So just to put that on your radar, again, very short, tip of the iceberg in terms of another form of scam where the ads themselves are fraudulent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Augustine, for this very interesting presentation.